Now, first and foremost, I want to talk about color theory. This is so fundamental to not just digital design, but in fact design everywhere because of our retina's innate ability to differentiate different frequencies of light waves. We're able to see different colors. Of course, you can get very philosophical about this and whether if my version of red is the same as your version of red, but it's well known that certain frequencies, i.e. certain colors or certain shades, evokes different sentiments in people that are pretty much uniform. So let's have a look at some of the various moods that are attributed to different colors and how you can use different colors to achieve different ends. So the first one we're going to look at is red. And this is traditionally associated with love, energy, intensity. So you end up seeing a lot of car adverts that use red as one of their primary colors in the color palette. And the reason is it's meant to be exciting, it's meant to be fast, and it conveys that intensity that people look for in fast cars. And also, when you're looking at ads that are trying to sell you something relating to love, you see the color red being used predominantly in their color palette. So I think it's really helpful analyzing adverts because these are essentially really well thought out experiments in persuasion and manipulating human psychology. Advertising agencies are essentially really, really good at using their print ads or their moving image ads to persuade us to buy certain things. And they do that through different ways, either by evoking certain emotions within us or by suggesting to us the idea that we could be as happy and successful as the people in the adverts if only we just bought whatever it is that they were selling to us. So I'll leave the ethics and morals aside for the philosophers, but in terms of studying what works in design, adverts are really helpful for helping us identify some of those key factors. So the next time that you see an ad, try to see what techniques they're using or which design principles they're using to either make their design look beautiful or try and see what emotion they're trying to evoke in you. So red sells to people on this idea of intensity, of love, of excitement. Now let's look at the next color palette, yellow. Now yellow tends to be used for things that try to convey joy, happiness, intellect, and it's also an incredibly attention-grabbing color, which is perhaps why, if you guys remember, this advert made the news in the UK certainly, about this protein shake company. Now, of course, there's a lot of discussion regarding the message of this advert, but that's for somebody else to discuss. What I'm interested in is why did this particular ad attract so many people's attention and, in the end, criticism when there are so many other adverts that essentially have the same message? And I believe a part of that is their choice of color palette. The use of this bright shade of yellow is incredibly attention grabbing. It's like taking a huge fluorescent highlighter and just highlighting the whole ad. Now, I remember seeing them when I was walking around in the London Underground system, and it was impossible to not see it because of how attention grabbing that color is. But remember, if you have an app with a background that is this kind of bright yellow, because the color is so intense, people won't be able to stare at it for a very long time, and you will get attention fatigue. So this is something that is probably better used for attention grabbing purposes. So say for your app icon designs or for your app screenshot designs that go up on the App Store, so that when that user is scrolling through the App Store, that your particular app grabs their attention and becomes the one that they download. In terms of the actual design for your app, for the backgrounds or etc., this particular shade of yellow is probably a bit too intense. And then we've got various shades of green, which tend to convey ideas of freshness, safety, growth. So you see a lot of food related services using this in their branding. For example, Amazon Fresh. What else conveys freshness more than this grassy green color palette? And it's also probably why all of these food bloggers managed to convince millions of people into this green juice craze. I mean, if you look at the thing, it seems to be the very emblem of life and freshness itself, even though you might be like me and not much of a convert because it tastes absolutely gross. But you can see through its color palette why it would appeal to health conscious people. So choosing your color palette is not just about, advertising and attention grabbing. It's also about selling your product and appealing to certain instincts or desires that people have. Next, we're going to talk about blue, which has traditionally always been about stability, trust, serenity, And, in fact, when you think about anything that's related to medical or medicine or health, it tends to be using a blue color palette. So here's a tip that you might not expect from a design class, but the next time that you go to a job interview, if you wanted to instantly come across as more trustworthy, the tip from the designers is to wear a blue shirt. Without speaking, the color already speaks for you and conveys this idea of stability and trust. I mean, just look at this guy. I would give him a job even though he doesn't even have a face. So equally, when you're making a design that needs people to have faith and trust in you, then blue is a good choice. And finally, we've got purple, which is meant to evoke ideas of royalty, wealth, femininity. So this is pretty much the color of choice for a lot of payday loan companies, and especially those that are targeting women for some reason. But actually, it's a beautiful color palette, and I wish that more people would use it for projects other than payday loans. So the next time that you're designing an app, the first thing to think about is what emotions and what ideas are you trying to convey in the user, and pick a color palette accordingly.